the Art of Leadership Network.
Well, hey friends, welcome to the Lead Culture Podcast, part of the Art of Leadership Network. I'm your host, Jenny Catron, CEO of the Foresight Group. We're a company that is dedicated to helping leaders develop thriving teams. You're going to hear that over and over from me. Healthy leaders, healthy teams. It's what we're all about. Each week, I'll be your guide as we explore practical strategies to equip you with the tools you need to lead with clarity, confidence, and build unstoppable momentum in your organization. My mission is to be your trusted coach, empowering you to master the art of self-leadership so you'll learn to lead yourself well so you can lead others better. Each week, we take a deep dive on a leadership or a culture topic. You'll hear stories from amazing guests and leaders like you who are committed to leading well. So let's dive in and keep learning on this leadership journey together. Friends, today I am joined by Catherine Gates. Catherine is the Vice President of Partnerships for the Polished Network, a national nonprofit that emboldens women in their faith and work. She's the author of The Confidence Cornerstone, a woman's guide to fearless leadership. Catherine has diverse business experience in a variety of industries and leadership roles, from technology consulting to sales and leadership training. She's been helping people integrate their faith and work since 2013. She is passionate about helping people achieve more of their God-given potential by bringing faith into every area of life. And you guys, Catherine and I have a fantastic conversation today. It's not just for women leaders. It is actually a really helpful conversation where we talk about her journey from the tech world to faith and work and just all of the nuances in between. We talk about the power of allies and mentors in our work. And she shares with us the gift of new seasons and reinvention and what that looked like, and some of the hard parts of that, and some of the reflection on just what God did and what God, just the next steps he created for her in that journey. And so here's my conversation with Catherine Gates. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for joining me on the Lead Culture Podcast today. Excited to dive into another conversation of all things leadership, and excited to just connect with you, learn about your leadership journey, and have a good conversation today. So thanks for joining me.
It's great to be here with you, Jenny.
It's going to be fun. Well, I would love to start out by having you tell us about your career journey, and maybe when you realized you had a passion for leadership.
Yeah, it's an interesting career journey. I started out at the age of 19 as a cobalt programmer, if you can believe that. Obviously, God had other things in mind for me because I didn't stay in that position very long. I thought I'd be there for a few years, figure things out. I decided to go to a technical school instead of college because I felt like I needed to get into the workforce as quickly as possible. My family had some, financial challenges, and I just felt like I needed to get independent and financially secure on my own. And so 15 months into it, I got recruited by a software house as a systems engineer at the age of 21. And I thought, I don't think they understand that I'm very green, but I got a fast track into, it was in Manhattan. And I got just a fast track into that whole sales world and supporting the sales team. And then there was a point where the boss that I had to begin with was awesome, but then he left, and the integrity that I had to deal with after that was not good. And so then I got a position with Arrow Electronics to start up an information center. So again, this is at the age of 23. Starting a whole department. I didn't even know what an information center was per se, but I figured it out. And I think that's really when I realized that spark for leadership because I really enjoyed, and I do enjoy starting new things. I love learning, and I love getting to understand what the business leaders were doing, the people who I was going to be serving, and putting my ideas together, and just figuring out how to present them and put this whole thing into action. So I think that's really where I started to experience, I'm leading a department. I had people reporting to me. I like this. I was still so new and had a lot to learn, but it was wonderful. And I stayed in technology. I actually had my own consulting business at the age of 28. But then things took a turn and I had to basically restart my career around the age of 36. I had my business partner was my husband. We got divorced. And so I realized technology is not really what I want to do anymore. I got to teach. I got to do a lot of teaching. I loved that. And I wanted to do it more in terms of leadership and helping people achieve their goals. And so, but when your resume is all technology, it's hard to make that transition.
Sure.
And so I took a position as a project manager at one point, a director of operations. I was doing just a lot of different things. I actually started doing sales training, which I didn't even see myself as a salesperson, but somehow I ended up there and loved it because it was an integrity-based form of selling and really building relationships and getting to know other people's needs. So I got to do that. And then nonprofit work and eventually leading into the work that I'm doing now. But when when you think about it, it seems like a circuitous route to get to where I am.
Sure.
But then it's oh, I see. God, you're using all of those things. And I think the biggest thing is just having an understanding of people who work in large corporations, in small businesses, in entrepreneurial endeavors. I've had some experience with all of that, but I've had to be flexible. I've had to be adaptable.
Yeah. You learn so much in different experiences like that just give you perspective and just more greater insight into the different dynamics leaders experience. I'm so curious though, 23, you're launching an info center and that's no small thing, launching and starting something, for the business. What do you think your leaders saw in you that said, hey, let's give this 23-year-old a shot to launch this new thing for us?
I guess it's similar to what even, the software house saw, right? I mean, at 21, what systems engineer? It's really interesting, Jenny, because I think that's part of what's helped me throughout my career is that people have seen in me things I didn't even know I had. And I think it's enthusiasm. It's an ability to develop relationships and connect with people. It's a willingness to learn because you know what? Don't hire people who know it all. Hire people who are willing to learn and who have the ability to align with your cultural values. Right?
That's right.
Because first of all, I don't care how many degrees you have or how much you know or experience. We've all got to be willing to learn because things are changing all the time.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think it's some of that, the enthusiasm, the passion. I mean, I've definitely been told I'm passionate. And I think that passion really goes a long way in building relationships.
Yeah, it's just that can-do spirit, right? I think so many leaders are just hungry for people on their team who, I don't need you to know everything. I just need you to be willing to figure it out and have a great attitude trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
When I think about some of the team members that I've valued so significantly over the years, it's the ones that are just willing to dive in and figure it out with you and bring that passion and enthusiasm for the goal and the work that we're doing. And so, but I always love those stories because similar to you, I was kind of thrown in, into a big job at 23 years old. And I look back and I'm thinking, what were my leaders thinking in giving me all that responsibility, right? And then but yet I know how much that stretched me and grew me and formed, the leader, that I hope I'm becoming. And then I wonder, okay, how much am I doing that for others? Am I taking those risks? Am I seeing the potential and trying to draw out the best of some of the young leaders around me too.
Yeah.
And so
that's so good.
Am I passing it on? Right. And
Yes.
because like now, like 23-year-olds feel so young to me. And I'm like, but I was that age and somebody believed in me. So how do I do that and keep myself, in that posture of wanting to invest in and see the potential in people?
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear some more of maybe those key moments on your leadership journey. You've kind of nodded to a few of those, but were there people or events that were really catalytic in your growth as you reflect on your journey so far?
I think certainly, as I said already, it was people seeing things in me that I didn't even know that I had in myself. I will never forget some of these people's names. I mean, when I was at Arrow, this other woman came in after me. Her name was Gabriella Inns. I can't find her. I don't know what happened to her, but she and I reported to the same boss, and she was much more seasoned than me.
Sure.
And she was like, okay, you realize you have to write a proposal before you start this whole thing, right? You've got to take your ideas and put them in a proposal. Oh, what's that?
Right.
And I still have that proposal, by the way. It's so funny. But
that's awesome.
She helped me figure out how to put that together and organize my ideas in a way that I could present them to management. I think, even starting my business, yes, it was with now my ex-husband, but I wanted to start a business. I was afraid, like it just seemed too overwhelming to do on my own. And so the fact that he came alongside me and partnered with me, and we worked actually so well together. That was one area that was phenomenal about our relationship was our skills and our personalities really complemented each other well. He was more he wanted to dive into the details, the accountant, the programmer that did amazing things. I wanted to be with the people, teaching, selling.
Sure.
And so it just worked really, really well. And so I'm grateful that I had that experience. I realized I'm more of an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur, I guess,
okay.
if you will.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a need to go out and start another business, but I love doing it within my organization. So I think that was a key moment. And of course, when I gave up the company, right? When I found myself as a single mother having to redefine my career, completely reinvent myself, really.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the people who saw something in me then as well. In order to get to that sales training role, I actually had to be a salesperson for a little while. That wasn't my plan. That was God's plan. But I remember going to a career fair and I just walked right by all the tables that were looking for salespeople because I was like, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that, right?
This man from ADT came after me and he said, have you come to our table? I was like, no. I mean, he didn't even know me, but for some reason, there was something about, I don't know, my presence or the way I was interacting that he noticed. And he said, you really need to come in. And thank God I did, because I got the experience and then I was able to go and be a sales trainer and say, I walked in those shoes for a while.
Yeah. I was going to say, sales is never something that I was particularly interested in, but I'm so grateful for the experience of it because I think some of just, again, understanding people, there are just so many things that I've taken away from experiences like that I didn't know I wanted to do that job, but came away with so much just helpful skills, I think, in my journey with some sales roles.
Even like courage, just boldness and risk taking.
Yep.
But the one thing I will say about that period, because it was a very humbling period, to have to take that position at ADT. It's like, what am I doing here? I had my own software consulting business. What am I doing here? It was very humbling. And I needed that. That was a really critical part of my leadership journey. Because frankly, there was a point where, I just wasn't that humble.
We've all had those moments, haven't we? Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that your reflection on that though, because I do think sometimes when our journeys take us in unexpected places, we are just in such a hurry to get out of it that sometimes we miss what's being refined in us in those moments.
Yes.
And so I love that, that's kind of your observation and takeaway is, gosh, there was some humility that was just developed and nurtured in having to go through just kind of that unexpected turn. I bet that, you referenced that season of being kind of that redefinition and reinvention. And I didn't plan to ask you this, but I think there's probably a lot of listeners that resonate with this, like the unexpected turns in life or in your career. And yours was kind of the double whammy, right? You're going through a divorce and becoming a single mom. You're having to, release your business and start new. How do you coach leaders that are kind of in those moments of redefinition or reinvention? Like, how would you encourage the ones that maybe are in that season right now?
Yeah, I've had that opportunity many, many times. I always enjoy taking what God's done in my life and sharing it with people who are going through similar situations. And so one of the things I really encourage people around is to look at what is your skill inventory? What are the things that God has developed in you? I mean, first of all, everything starts with prayer, right? All right, Lord, you're not going to waste this. Let's not waste this time. Yeah. What do you need me to see? What are you doing in my life? Where are you taking me? How can I use all the skills and experience that you have brought me through? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a completely different thing. And I see too many people get sort of tunnel vision in terms of, this is what I've always done, so I've got to find another position here. Meanwhile, that might be a dead end for them. That might be something God's saying, no, that door is shut. Don't go back there. I've got something new for you, And so I really coach people to look at, here's an opportunity. This was an opportunity for me, right? Yep. What are the skills I bring to the table? What do I feel like I really have to contribute? What would light me up and really, give me an opportunity to thrive in my gifts? And by the way, sometimes you got to take a sales position with ADT. Like sometimes you got to do something that that is not what I had in mind. It's okay. It's temporary. And it might actually give you relationship skills, experience, ideas that you would not have otherwise. So that's another thing I would say is don't be afraid to just try those things. It's just short term. If that's what you need to do, you don't know where it might lead. And it really, I will always be grateful for that experience. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Because again, so many times as I look on parts of my journey, it's like the unexpected twists and turns were often the thing that brought me to some of the richest parts of my journey so far, and finding what can I learn in this season? Like what perspective do I need to gain? What do I need to be learning now is so valuable. So
it brings the unexpected breakthroughs, the unexpected, exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all I could ever have asked or imagined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. With kind of to that, I'm shifting gears a little bit, Catherine, but you have such a passion for the faith and work space. And so I'd love to hear you talk about where did that passion come from? Just how did you just develop a passion for really your faith informing your work and the integration of those things? Tell us more about that part of your story.
Yeah. So, I was raised to believe in God, going to church. I was not raised to understand that Jesus wanted a personal relationship with me. And so that's the reason I was kind of doing life and work, my career on my own. Like I thought I had to, it all depended on me. I've got to do this in my own strength. And God got a hold of me when, divorce and then like no job for 4 months for the first time in my life. Jenny, when I was turning 40, just before I turned 40, I had to go back and live with my mother. Talk about humility, right?
Sure.
Just to get back on my feet. Sure. And so it was that experience that made me realize, I think I need God.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
he put people in my path who pointed me to him, to Bible studies, to a good church. But after that, when I was doing that sales training, I ended up going to work for one of our clients. And there was a woman, Joy, on the sales team who often was the top salesperson. And in the sales meetings, when she was acknowledged, she would give glory to God every time. This was on Long Island, where you don't really...
Yeah, this is not normal, right?
We didn't really talk about our faith in social circles, And she would give glory to God for every time she was acknowledged. She would pray with her customers. She would talk about what God was doing in her life. And I thought, and she wasn't proselytizing, she was just talking from her own...
just genuinely how she felt.
Yeah. And so I was at a place in my faith where I was taking it seriously. And I thought, I wonder if I should include God in my work, and what would that look like? And so there were a group of women that the group of us got together, and we actually had conversations every other month or so to talk about how we would integrate our spirituality in our work, because not everybody was Christian. Some people came from different faith backgrounds.
Sure.
But then I ended up, because my son moved to live with his father when he turned 11. That was our agreement. I didn't know his father was going to move to Arkansas, though.
Oh.
That was not my plan.
Sure.
And I, after 3 years of praying, finally asked God what he wanted it to look like. And that's when God was like, gee, thanks for asking me, go move to Arkansas. So shortly after I moved to Arkansas, so I'd been exploring the faith and work thing for maybe about 4 years. I was going to this church, and David Roth, who was the CEO of Work Matters at the time, gave the sermon on Labor Day and talked about faith and work and talked about Work Matters. And Jenny, it never even occurred to me to look for resources. So
right. Isn't that funny?
Was so excited. I went up and introduced myself. I got involved, started volunteering. And the next thing you know, David was releasing a Bible study. He wanted to release a Bible study he had written on the book of Nehemiah, workplace Bible study. But I was working now as an instructional designer for a training and development company. He came to our company and said, hey, could you help me kind of brush this up, polish it up? And so I got to work on that and worked my way into a job in August of 2013. And I feel like once I got bit with that faith and work bug and realized, there's nothing that should be separate from God. God wants everything. He wants us to co-labor with him in everything we do. He's with us all the time. He's just waiting for us to turn to him. And when you get that about your work, it changes everything else. It spills out into every other area of your life.
Why do you think that, so, even as you're sharing, it's like you didn't have, I think if I heard you correctly, you didn't grow up in a Christian tradition where did I understand you correctly in that like you kind of found God later in life?
So I knew God, but I just didn't know about a personal relationship with Jesus. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And I think even there are so many Christians who still keep it all so segregated.
Yes.
And I do you have a theory on why that is? Like why we keep our faith so segregated from work in most contexts?
Our culture encourages us to do that. The enemy doesn't want us to include God in the area that we spend more time probably than anywhere else.
Anything else. Yeah.
So we really, in fact, I recently was talking to a young woman who I've been mentoring for a few months, and she works for a company with strong Christian leaders. They live out their faith at work. I'm mentoring her about applying God's word to her work. She goes to the Work Matters Institute. 2 weeks in, she's like, Catherine, I just realized God wants us to co-labor with him in our work. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, you didn't realize that? Like after all of this But what it said to me was, that's how deep rooted the beliefs are in our culture,
That's right.
Go to church on Sunday. Are you hearing a message about how to live out your faith at work? You're hearing about finances.
Rarely.
You're hearing about marriage. You're hearing about so many other things, but most people aren't hearing about how God's word applies to our work.
That's right.
Of his word applies to our work.
Yeah. That's so good. And I think, our culture, because I noticed this in myself, like I'm so driven and independent that it is like I have to be super intentional to invite God into my work. And here I work mostly with Christians, I'm doing work with a lot of faith-based organizations. And yet it's like, I have to be really intentional about, am I inviting God into that? I'll notice the moments where I'm just striving in my own ambition and own power and not co-laboring with God in the work that I'm doing. And feel free to respond to that because you probably see that all the time. Yeah.
I have to discipline myself. I have to catch myself. It's so ingrained in us. It all depends on you. Make a way for yourself,
Yeah.
And God's like, you're cute. I'm here whenever you're ready.
Whenever you're ready. Hey, I'm just over here. Happy to help. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. So now with the Polished Network, you're working a lot with women. So, most of your career has been men and women. But now you're focused on women in the workplace. So tell us a little bit more about that. What are you noticing that women specifically need when it comes to this idea of integrating faith and work?
Yeah, it really started at Work Matters, and to your point, I was supporting men and women. A lot of times they were doing Bible studies. It was all women or all men, sometimes co-ed, but mostly, one or the other. And some of the women I would meet with were saying, I go to the business networking and there's no faith conversation. Church, I can't go to the 10 a.m. on Tuesday Bible study, and
That's
even
right.
when I'm there, I'm really not validated in my work. I'm really encouraged in my marriage, really encouraged as a mother, but I'm not, the work part is
so
not
true.
Validated. And where can I have conversations with other Christian working women who have career ambition, who want to advance in their career and want to be great singles, mothers, wives, daughters, friends, all the things. Right. And so it got to be, there were two women who felt very strongly, and we started this Christian Women in the Workplace here in Northwest Arkansas, monthly lunches. And clearly, Jenny, women are hungry for community of Christian working women where they can have authentic communication, authentic and transparent relationships and community.
Sure.
Where they can encourage each other and just navigate some of the challenges from a faith perspective.
That's right. Yeah. And those circles are so hard to find. I remember, so my first part of my career was music business in Nashville, corporate experience, full schedule, lots of travel, go. And I was very limitedly involved in my local church. And to your point, I didn't hear them talk much about my work world, or, my husband and I were in a small group together with other couples from the church, but there really wasn't anything that spoke to what I did every day. There were moms groups for moms, and there were other Bible studies and things that, like you said, met during the day. And so those were not things that I could be a part of. And so I remember feeling very on the fringes of the church.
Yeah.
Right. And then I was invited to come on staff as executive director because people, it was interesting. They saw my contribution in the marketplace and saw the skill and competency and, that I brought. And then when the church staff had a space for it, that's when I was invited in. And then what I realized when I went on church staff is that everything we were doing as a church staff was structured for moms that were staying at home, and there was nothing that existed for the working woman.
Yeah.
But it hadn't occurred to anybody on the team. And so I remember I started a small group for women leaders, and we actually made it a lunch, a small group. And we had some phenomenal women leaders in that group. And it was probably one of the richest things that I've done to this day. But I ended up having to create, kind of like you did. I had to create what I needed because it just didn't exist. And I think I don't think nothing was malicious. It was just not on people's radar of how do you connect with the woman who is career focused and has a little bit non-traditional, I think it's more, it's more normative now, but you rewind 15 years and what I was doing is a bit more non-traditional. So it was very interesting. I'd love to hear, what are some of the common issues that you see women leaders navigating today? Like, what are some of the themes or challenges that are kind of current for women leaders, especially Christian women leaders in the workplace?
I think part of it is women are still struggling to get the development opportunities that they really need. There's still a shortage of mentors for women who want to advance in their careers at any level, really at any level. There isn't enough sponsorship for women. And I'll tell you what, Jenny, I don't think it's that, leader, the higher you get, right, the more it's skewed towards men. Yeah. And so men need to invest in the women on their team. And it's not that I don't think it's that they don't want to. It's just that they go to their comfort level.
Sure.
They have more relationships with other men, or they're not quite sure how to develop a relationship with the women on their team.
That's right.
And so that's a real need, but we need more male allyship. We really need more men. And I'm seeing it happen. In fact, there's one organization, the gentleman who at the time was the chief operating officer and had a team under him. I think he had one female direct report. And one day he shared the story on a podcast that I did for She Works for Him. One day he taps one of the guys on the shoulder and says, "Hey, you want to go for barbecue?" So they have lunch and they're building that relationship, right? They're talking about things. And the next week, the woman, he had a one-on-one with the woman on his team. And she was like, "Hey, can I ask you something? Would you have invited me to barbecue?" And he, to his credit, he had to take a step back and be honest with himself. And he said, "No, I don't think I would." And he actually said, "I need to rethink that. I need to treat everybody. If I'm going to do it for one, I need to find a way to do it for all and give everybody equal
access,
equal access, right?
Connection.
So that is so important. And I also think, it's hard when women have their own perspective that they bring. They're trying to be heard, but sometimes that's difficult to figure out how to navigate that.
That's right.
And we've experienced, and I know I've experienced so many times where I say something, I know it's an important perspective. It's different from the guys. They're not seeing it and they're not always receptive. And so we need to figure out, we can't let that stop us. We need to figure out how to communicate in a way that they can see, that they can hear, and so that we are able to have those ideas move forward.
That's really good. I love that you acknowledge, men helping be those allies and supporters. I get the thing that encourages me is I do hear from a lot of male leaders. They're saying, "Jenny, how can I support the women on my team?" And because we work with a lot of churches or faith-based nonprofits, that sometimes the dynamics of, maybe we don't go male and female individually to lunch together,
right.
And which might have been of course I'm going to invite the guy to lunch. But then if I can't do that with the female leaders on my team, how do I handle that? And, but I love that I'm hearing more of those questions from men who are saying, "Hey, I recognize the women on my team really do need development. How do I do that?" And we've had a number of leaders that will end up sending their women through like our women in leadership cohorts or, investing in other resources and places for development. I mean, I think it's still wise to, then take take a couple people to lunch together,
Right.
and, so it doesn't have to be one-on-one if that's not comfortable, but you can still create those opportunities for some of the more relaxed relational moments that help build connection, build trust, and then help accelerate learning and development. I remember when I was in the music business, I was often one of the only females at the table or, in certain groups. And there was a number of the guys who would always go golfing together, on Friday afternoons, and they'd end up, making decisions or doing deals, while they're on the golf course. And I got so frustrated because I was constantly left out. And so one of my other good friends who had the same dynamic in her department, we both went and took golf lessons. Like we invested like ridiculous amount of money to like take golf lessons to remove the barrier from being excluded. I don't regret that I took golf lessons, but I still never got invited to the golf course with the guys on our team. But it, it was just I think sometimes there's so many things we do when we're maybe the only woman at the table that we're trying to figure out how do I get the access or the opportunities, especially for development and growth, that are sometimes not as natural as some of my male counterparts. And I think if as men are aware of that and looking for how can I create those moments for development, it can be such a gift to the women on their team. So,
Absolutely.
so valuable. So valuable. Well,
here's one thing, Jenny, I want to say.
Please. Yeah.
So I wrote a book called The Confidence Cornerstone, A Woman's Guide to Fearless Leadership. And so I got to do a bunch of research. And one thing that really stood out to me, it was a McKinsey and Company research, I think it was. And it said, if a company with one woman on the board outperforms a company with no women on the board by 26%.
Wow.
And so it just speaks to the importance of making sure that women's voices are heard. Better to have more than one, of course, but it's so important for men to recognize that because they're only seeing, one side of the elephant, if you will, so you need women to bring that other perspective so that you can have greater innovation, so that you can have greater success. And so really it's just so critical. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Well, as we wrap up, Catherine, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about Polished Network that you're a part of, the Boldly Conference that's coming up, and just ways that particularly women leaders can connect more with the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Polished, we embolden women in their faith at work. We do that in a few different ways. We have chapters very similar to what I had started at that one point, right? So we've since merged a couple of actually organizations. So we have chapters around the country where women can find community with other working women on a monthly basis. It's usually over a lunch hour where they get to build relationships and hear from a woman who's living out her faith at work. We have leadership collaboratories, so leadership peer groups for women at all levels of leadership, similar to the C-level, roundtables that exist.
Yeah.
Out there. But this is giving women an opportunity to connect with other women and build deeper relationships. They're limited to 12 and it's a 12-month program. So we have found women are really accelerating their growth through those. And then we do have the Boldly Conference. And so this year, the theme is Boldly Unified. It's Friday, October 18th. And we're super excited. It is a faith and work conference for women by women that offers professional development with a faith-forward perspective. So there is definitely a professional development aspect that's very much a part of it. So women can feel confident that they're coming and they will take away practical tips that they can apply to their work and to their growth as leaders. But it's always going to be propped up by faith, by ways that we include God in our work. And the speakers are always outstanding. This year, we have Sharon Hodey Miller, who's an author and speaker, Pat Armstrong, founder of Polished, and also a Bible teacher and author. We're excited this year to have Nikki Allison Lawrence, the president of e-commerce for Stanley Black & Decker. And of course, you will also be speaking. And we're very excited about that.
I'm so thrilled to be a part of it this year. I'm so grateful, Catherine, for just your investment and your work and blazing the trail for a lot of women leaders, especially in the faith and work space. And so grateful for all that you're doing to equip us. So we'll connect. We'll share links in the show notes so everybody can go check out both Polished and the Boldly Conference. And again, thanks for investing in us today. We're grateful.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
All right, friends. Well, I hope you found that conversation helpful. It's just fun to talk to different leaders that have had a different journey. And I love Catherine's just passion for how faith and work collide. And I think that's just an important reminder that idea of co-laboring, so valuable, because that independent streak in me that wants to do everything myself gets me in trouble every time. And so I love just that really important reminder of we're designed to co-labor with God in the work that we do. And how can we do that more effectively? So I would love to hear what you thought of this week's episode. You can connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Get Foresight. That's GET, the number 4, SIGHT, or at Jenny Catron, JENNICATRON. And then, guys, I would love it if you would share this episode with another leader. If you haven't done it, will you leave us a review, give us a thumbs up, give us just some feedback to let us know, is this helpful to you? Because that's our goal, is to equip you to lead well and to build that thriving team. And so we want to know, are we helping you hit that mark? And then if you're interested in more leadership resources to help your team thrive, be sure to be signed up for our free Insights newsletter. You can go to getforesight.com to check that out. There's just a quick place there where you can sign up for the newsletter. And here's the thing, you guys, new book is coming, and the people on the newsletter are going to be the first to know about it. So be sure to be on the newsletter so that you get kind of the latest updates from us, what we're doing. We send like one email a week. We are not blasting you. We're not overloading your inboxes, but it is a great place for us to connect with you on a regular basis, tell you what's coming up, particularly when we've got a new book coming and lots of fun stuff coming with it. So that's Get Foresight, the number, or GET. I can't speak today. GET, the number 4, SIGHT.com. Friends, I'm so grateful that you're on the leadership journey with me. We are blessed to have some amazing guests and people who are committed to learning and growing together. So thanks for being with us today. Keep leading well, and we'll see you next week.